Have you ever made a financial decision that just felt well off? Like you knew what you should do maybe, but you did something completely different and you couldn't quite explain why. Perhaps you held onto a losing stock for, I don't know, way too long, or you splurged on something you didn't really need, even when you were trying so hard to save. If that sounds familiar, well, you're in for a treat today.
We're taking a deep dive into something really fascinating: behavioral finance. It's all about the surprising psychology behind our money choices. And believe me, it's about so much more than just the numbers on a spreadsheet.
Exactly. Traditional economics often paints this picture of us as perfectly rational beings. But behavioral finance kind of steps in and says, hang on, not so fast. It blends psychology with economics. It explores how our cognitive biases, our emotions, even social pressures often steer our financial decisions, and often yet in ways that defy pure logic. What's really compelling here is how it reveals why these seemingly irrational choices can actually lead to big market swings or, costly personal mistakes. Right. So our mission today is to sort of pull back the curtain on these hidden forces. We'll unpack some of the most common behavioral biases. We'll talk about these hidden money scripts that often run silently in the background of our minds. And we'll confront the surprising, often overlooked costs of debt on our overall well-being. Ultimately, we want to equip you with practical, mindful strategies. This deep dive, it aims to give you a shortcut, really, a shortcut to understanding these surprising forces shaping your financial life, and hopefully a toolkit to navigate your finances with greater awareness and intention. Okay, so let's dive in. Let's start by unpacking some specific biases, the ones that are particularly common in the world of investing. These are those mental shortcuts, or maybe distortions, that can lead even, experienced investors down the wrong path.
First up, let's talk about overconfidence bias. This is a big one. This is when investors genuinely overestimate their own abilities, their own knowledge. They think they're better or smarter than they actually are, frankly. Think about this. The American Automobile Association found that a staggering 78% of Americans believe they are better than average drivers, which mathematically is impossible, right? And similarly, research shows 64% of investors believe they have a high level of investment knowledge. This often prompts people to make high-risk investments because they believe they can consistently beat the market through their own research, their own active trading.
Yeah, and that data you mentioned about actively managed funds, that really hammers home the point about overconfidence, doesn't it? In 2023, only about a quarter of actively managed mutual funds actually outperformed the market over the previous 10 years. That's a pretty powerful reality check against this illusion that we, have it all figured out.
It is. And the real insight here, I think, isn't just that we're overconfident, it's that our brains often mistake luck, or maybe just random success, as direct proof of our superior skill. Real understanding comes from knowing when you're just riding a market wave versus when you're genuinely steering the ship effectively. So to counter this, getting input from financial advisors is key, as is doing something called a pre-mortem exercise. Basically, imagining potential negative outcomes of an investment strategy, say 10 or 15 years out. It helps you logically evaluate the pitfalls before they actually happen. Okay. Building on that idea of how our minds can mislead us, let's talk about how the very first piece of information we get can have this huge sway over our decisions. That's what we call anchoring bias, right? Yes, and it's incredibly powerful. Let's say you see a stock initially priced at $100, then it drops to $80. You might still see it as a bargain, purely because of that initial $100 anchor, even if fundamentally it's not actually undervalued anymore. This initial anchor can lead to poor investment choices, or even really dangerous financial stretches, like anchoring onto the maximum pre-approval amount for a mortgage rather than figuring out what you can genuinely comfortably afford. The challenge is, how do you stop getting stuck on these initial, sometimes irrelevant numbers?
Well, the sources suggest trying to actively, consciously eliminate that first anchor from your thinking. Or if you're a professional dealing with clients, maybe carefully setting the anchor higher or lower, depending on what the client's actual goal is. For you listening, it really means being incredibly disciplined. Don't let that first number you hear become the only number you consider. Always step back and ask, okay, what's the actual value here, regardless of what I saw first?
Another really pervasive bias is confirmation bias. This is our natural human tendency to seek out information that confirms what we already believe. And just as importantly, to ignore or downplay evidence that contradicts those beliefs. Yeah, it just feels better to be right, doesn't it?
Oh, it's so tricky because it powerfully reinforces your existing worldview, right? And it
Yeah.
can actively stop you from making balanced, objective financial decisions. You end up in this echo chamber of your own making.
And that's precisely why it's so insidious, yeah.
Yeah.
The deeper insight, I think, is that our brains just prefer things to be easy, cognitively speaking. Challenging our own beliefs takes real mental effort, so we unconsciously drift towards stuff that confirms them. To fight it, you have to actively, intentionally seek out contrary viewpoints, challenge your own assumptions about historical trends, do thorough research that explicitly includes opposing perspectives. Don't just look for articles that agree with you. And regularly reviewing your investment performance against objective benchmarks that can also help you avoid just, glossing over the data that contradicts what you want to believe.
Okay, so for the investing biases, let's talk finally about herd mentality. This is that tendency for people to follow the crowd, right? Assuming the majority must be right simply because, well, everyone else is doing it.
Yeah, FOMO, fear of missing out, is powerful in investing. And while a popular strategy might feel exciting, and you might feel like you're missing out on the next big thing if you skip it, following trendy investment ideas isn't always a good fit for your specific portfolio. It can seriously derail your long-term goals. The critical distinction here, I think, is figuring out the difference between genuine collective wisdom and just, groupthink, panic, or euphoria. A professional financial advisor can be really valuable here. They can assess investments based on actual market conditions and your individual financial situation, not just based on emotional responses or what's trending on, Reddit or Twitter.
Right. So for you, the listener, developing a solid investment plan, one based on historical trends and your personal risk tolerance, along with things like portfolio diversification and having predetermined exit strategies, that all helps minimize the impact of just blindly following the crowd. It really comes down to trusting your own plan, not the latest hot tip everyone's talking about. Now, it's definitely not just about investing in the stock market. These psychological quirks affect our everyday money habits too, often without us even noticing. Let's dive a bit deeper into some biases that impact how we spend, how we save, and how we deal with debt day to day.
Okay, let's start with loss aversion. Psychologically, the pain of a loss feels much more intense than the pleasure of an equivalent gain. It's asymmetric. This even includes something called the endowment effect. That's where we value something more simply because we own it, even if we just got it for free a minute ago.
So what does that mean for your finances in practice? Well, you might find yourself prioritizing paying down loans, maybe even low-interest ones, rather than building up savings. Even if the loan has a lower interest rate than the potential return you could get on a savings investment, it's because debts can feel like these immediate, tangible losses that you need to get rid of right now, whereas savings might feel like a potential gain, something less certain, less urgent. It's almost like our brain prioritizes avoiding a paper cut over, say, getting a significant raise. It's weird, isn't it?
It is weird, but very human. The insight here is probably to just assume you are more sensitive to loss than you logically think you should be. And you can actually leverage this. One clever way is by reframing things. Try visualizing the amount you stand not to have in the future if you don't build savings, instead of just focusing on how much you will have. You could even, say, track your savings goals visually as being in the red initially, with each deposit getting you closer to being in the black. Use that aversion to loss to actually motivate saving.
Interesting. Okay, then there's status quo bias. This is our sometimes surprisingly powerful commitment to just keeping things as they are, often driven by sheer inertia or maybe just not paying attention.
Right. Even if you intellectually know you should make better financial decisions, maybe cancel that subscription or start saving more, you might just not.
Yeah.
You fail to make the changes, you continue not saving, or you keep paying for ongoing expenses that maybe don't make sense anymore but have just become a habit. The way to overcome this is to try and look at your spending and savings with completely fresh eyes, as if you're seeing them for the first time. And then make it as easy as possible, frictionless even, to choose the better alternative. Don't just assume that because you've always done it this way, it's the best option now.
Okay, let's look at a pair of biases that often seem to go together. Decision paralysis and limited attention. That feeling when you're faced with way too many choices, maybe for a savings account or an investment, and you feel overwhelmed. You worry you'll pick the wrong one and regret it later. And that often leads to just doing nothing at all, total inaction, and our attention span. Well, that's a very finite resource, isn't it? It makes us surprisingly bad at actual multitasking.
It's a profound limitation, really. Remember that classic psychology experiment? The one where participants were counting basketball passes, and they completely missed a person in a gorilla suit walking right through the middle of the court because they were so focused on the task. Similarly, you might easily forget a really crucial loan payment due date if it's buried in like 20 pages of dense paperwork you're trying to process all at once. The key insight is that cognitive overload is a genuine barrier to good decision-making. So try to avoid overwhelming yourself with too many options right from the start. Break down complex financial information into smaller, more digestible chunks, and tackle the most important decisions first when your attention and energy are freshest.
Right. And speaking of how our minds process information, there's availability bias. This is when we tend to focus on whatever easily pops into our head, usually because it's vivid or recent or maybe emotionally charged.
Exactly. Your past memories, especially if you had a really bad experience with a financial institution or a particular type of investment, those can disproportionately influence your current decisions, maybe preventing you from seeing new opportunities clearly. Or, conversely, you might think a financial product is more promising than it is, simply because you've heard about it a lot recently in the news from a friend, whatever. To try to balance this out, you need to actively reflect on the full spectrum of your experiences, the good and the bad. And perhaps even intentionally seek out and share positive financial stories, maybe with friends or family, to counter any negative biases that might be holding you or them back.
Now, here's a big one. A struggle I think many of us know all too well. Now versus later. It's also known as hyperbolic discounting. This bias really highlights our impulsive side, doesn't it? That craving for immediate gratification, often at the direct expense of our important long-term goals, like saving for retirement.
It's fascinating how our perception of value shifts depending on the time frame. There was a study where people were asked, would you prefer $1 today or $3 tomorrow? Most people chose the dollar today, immediate reward. But if the choice was framed as $1 in a year or $3 in a year and a day, most people chose the $3. The delay itself changed the preference structure. So if we all say we want to save for the future, why is it often so hard? What's really going on? It's that powerful, visceral pull of present desires, the temptation to spend money on what we want and need right now.
So how do we fight that? To counter this, the advice is offered to set up a saving plan before you feel that pain of parting with the money. Automate it. Another powerful strategy is to visualize in detail future projections of your savings. Really try to help yourself empathize with your future self. Make it real. You can even commit to a savings or a loan repayment plan that has a delayed start. Give your present self time to get used to the idea of the future commitment.
And closely related to that struggle is ego depletion, or what's often called decision fatigue. Our ability to make good, rational decisions. It's like a muscle. It's a finite resource that can actually get drained by making too many choices or exerting too much cognitive effort over a period.
So when are we most vulnerable to making a bad financial decision? Often it's when we're tired or hungry, or maybe later in the day or towards the end of the week when our mental energy is just low. The solution is actually remarkably simple, conceptually at least. Stagger the decisions you have to make. Deal with the important choices first when you're fresh. And make good practices like saving or budgeting as automatic as possible so they require less active decision-making energy.
We also often fall prey to something called the what the hell effect. I love the name. This is when, once we've deviated from our original plan a little bit, maybe just once or twice, we essentially give up. We throw in the towel and lose self-control entirely.
Right. It's that classic, oh, well, I've already had one cookie, so what the hell? I might as well eat the whole box scenario. But apply to your finances, and this can seriously derail your financial plans, turning a small slip-up into a major setback. The advice here is really insightful. Try replacing purely inhibitional goals like, I won't spend $100 on impulse buys this month, with acquisitional goals like, I will save $100 towards my emergency fund this month. Frame it positively. Also, build in a little bit of wiggle room for being human. Don't aim for impossible perfection. And create opportunities to regularly reset and recommit to your goals, maybe weekly or monthly.
And, of course, the old classic, procrastination. We're generally not great at managing our time, are we? We often wait until the very last possible moment to tackle tasks, especially ones that feel difficult or unpleasant.
Yeah, why do people say they really want to do something important, like enrolling in their company's retirement plan or opening a high-yield savings account, but they just never quite get around to it? It's because taking action, even if it's clearly beneficial in the long run, often requires some immediate effort or hassle. There was a study that actually showed students who pre-committed themselves to specific deadlines for their coursework consistently got higher grades than those who didn't.
Exactly. So for you listening, this translates directly into creating clear, actionable deadlines for your financial tasks. Ideally, make them real deadlines with some kind of consequence, even if it's just personal accountability, if they're missed. And then, crucially, Actually block out time on your schedule to complete those financial tasks. Treat them like important, non-negotiable appointments with yourself.
Okay, another really fascinating one. Mental accounting. This is the tendency we have to categorize and treat money differently depending on where it came from or where we intend for it to go, even though logically a dollar is a dollar, right?
Totally illogical, but so common. Consider this study. If people imagined they'd bought a $10 theater ticket but lost it just before entering the theater, only 46% said they would buy another ticket. But if they imagined they lost a $10 bill on the way to buy the ticket, a surprising 88% said they would still go ahead and buy the ticket. The actual financial loss is identical $10. But the mental account the money belonged to felt different. One was the entertainment account maybe, the other was just cash. The core question this raises is, why on earth don't people treat all dollars equally, regardless of their perceived source or intended destination?
It's strange when you think about it like that. The practical advice here is actually to lean into it, consciously. Create different mental accounts for different purposes, spending, saving, investing, fun money, whatever works for you. And maybe even set up actual separate physical bank accounts or digital pots to reflect these categories. It helps you respect those mental boundaries you've deliberately set up for different money purposes.
Yeah, it can be surprisingly effective. And finally for this section, let's quickly touch on opportunity cost neglect. This is when people tend to make judgments using only the information that's right in front of them. They fail to explicitly recognize or weigh what they're giving up when they make a decision to spend or invest in one thing versus another.
Right. You might focus intensely on what you're getting right now, the new gadget, the fancy meal, but you don't actively consider what you're foregoing or giving up in the long term, maybe progress towards a down payment or that trip you wanted to take. The profound practical strategy here is to actively force yourself to think about the trade-offs. Make them explicit. So instead of just thinking about the dollar cost of a purchase, make yourself frame it differently. Think, okay, putting that addition on the house this year will cost me, say, 3 summer beach trips over the next few years. That kind of direct comparison makes the invisible opportunity cost much more tangible, much more real. Okay, so beyond these specific biases, which we can often sort of pinpoint if you look closely, there are even deeper, often completely unconscious beliefs that fundamentally shape our financial lives. Let's really dig into this idea of money scripts.
Right, money scripts. These are typically unconscious, deeply held beliefs about money and life itself. They're often formed way back in childhood, from our parents, other significant people, our circumstances growing up, and society at large. They become this ingrained part of our worldview, often developed initially as a kind of survival mechanism. And because of that, they're incredibly resistant to change, especially when there's strong emotion attached to them from those early experiences.
And what's really insidious about them is that we often act on these scripts as if they're absolute truths, right? Even when they consistently cause us pain or lead to poor financial outcomes, we rarely step back and question where they actually came from. Instead, we tend to blame others, maybe our spouse or boss or external circumstances for our financial difficulties. We don't look inward at these powerful hidden directives guiding our behavior.
There's a really compelling example that illuminates this perfectly. Take a fictional guy, Dustin. When he's faced with the unexpected cost of his daughter's braces, he reacts with this explosive anger, shouting about how they can't possibly afford it, how dentists are just lining their own pockets. Now, what's fascinating here isn't just the anger itself. It's that his reaction probably isn't fundamentally about the current cost of the braces. It likely stems from unresolved feelings from his own childhood, maybe constantly hearing we can't afford it, or perhaps witnessing professionals being distrusted or denigrated in his family. His anger is like an emotional echo of past deprivation or learned mistrust.
Wow. So, to Dustin, in that moment, his behavior makes perfect logical sense within the context of his underlying unexamined money script. Even if it seems completely irrational, maybe even hurtful to his wife, Emily, or to an outside observer like us. This really highlights how these scripts are often completely unexamined and very context-bound. They might have made sense or served a purpose at one point in his life, but now they're incomplete, too rigid, and actually causing real problems in his current life.
Exactly. And this naturally leads us to consider, what happens when these powerful money scripts are actually born from trauma? Financial trauma is a real thing. Research actually shows that even seasoned financial professionals themselves experienced significant post-traumatic stress symptoms after the 2008 financial crisis. Some of them completely abandoned traditional long-term investment strategies in favor of much more reactive tactical asset management as a direct symptom of that financial trauma they experienced.
And trauma in this context, it can manifest in incredibly different ways, almost opposite ways, can't it? It might lead to hyperarousal, someone obsessively monitoring their accounts, constantly worrying about money, or it could lead to dissociation where someone avoids dealing with money matters entirely. They just shut down. It's actually not that uncommon for people with these opposite trauma responses to end up marrying each other, creating a very unique, often challenging financial dynamic in their relationship. The really critical insight here, though, is that until the deep emotion attached to these primal money scripts is acknowledged, processed, and somehow dissipated, deep, lasting behavioral change is incredibly difficult, if not impossible.
And closely related to these scripts is how we often tie our very sense of self-worth directly to money and financial success. Research from the University at Buffalo found that staking your self-worth primarily on financial pursuits has some significant negative psychological consequences.
You know, it's interesting because people don't often think about the downsides, do they? Society so overtly values wealth and financial success. Basing your self-esteem primarily on financial success actually predicts making more financial social comparisons, which rarely make us feel good. It predicts feeling less personal autonomy, less control over your life, and experiencing more financial hassles, more stress, and more anxiety overall. Just thinking about a financial problem can generate this disproportionate flood of sadness and anger for individuals whose self-worth is heavily tied to money.
Yeah, it's a heavy burden. But there's a powerful counter to this: self-affirmation. Simply taking some time consciously to think about and acknowledge your personal strengths, your values, your positive qualities that are not tied to money. That can effectively help repair self-esteem and eliminate that negative impact on your feelings of autonomy. It's about reminding yourself of your inherent worth, which exists completely separate from your bank account balance or net worth.
That's a great point.
Okay.
Okay, finally, in this section, let's talk about the hidden costs of debt. Because it's so much more than just a number on a monthly statement, isn't it? It profoundly impacts your mental and even your physical well-being.
Absolutely. Debt can be a truly crushing weight. It can lead to intense anxiety just from the constant uncertainty. It can lead to deep depression stemming from a feeling of hopelessness, of being trapped, even in extreme cases contributing to suicidal thoughts. And physically, the constant stress from debt keeps your body in that chronic fight or flight mode. It keeps releasing cortisol. And over time, that chronic stress can contribute to serious illnesses like heart disease, high blood pressure, hypertension. The list goes on.
And here's a perspective that really stopped me in my tracks. Think about opportunity cost again. Paying, say, $500 a month towards credit card debt over 5 years. Okay, you paid off the debt. That's good. But it also means you lost the opportunity to potentially earn a return on investment of over $38,000 if that same money had been invested instead, maybe earning just a modest 5% return. Plus, debt strains relationships. It limits your future financial plans, buying a home, changing careers. It can leave you feeling stuck, maybe in an unhappy job, simply because you feel you can't afford to leave.
It has huge ripple effects. So to deal with these really pervasive negative mental aspects of debt, it's crucial to first just acknowledge your feelings about it, without judgment. It's okay to feel stressed or scared. Then create a clear, actionable debt repayment plan. Knowing you have a plan can itself reduce anxiety. Prioritize the high-interest debt first, usually. Be honest with yourself and maybe with loved ones, if appropriate, about the situation. Don't hide it. And please, don't hesitate to seek professional help if the burden feels overwhelming. Credit counselors, financial therapists, they exist for a reason. Practicing self-care throughout the debt repayment process is absolutely vital. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And remember to focus on celebrating your progress, no matter how small each step might seem. Every dollar paid down is a win.
Okay, so we've definitely unpacked a lot of challenges today. We've highlighted these invisible psychological forces pulling us in different directions with our money. But the truly good news, the hopeful part, is that you absolutely can start to address these things. You can gain more control. It's really about consciously transforming how you interact with your money stuff into a sustainable self-care practice. And what's really powerful here, I think, is the idea that it's about conscious, intentional, regular habits. It's the consistency that provides the cumulative benefit over time.
Exactly. A successful, sustainable money practice, according to our sources, has a few key elements. First, you need to find the just right amount of time for you. Not so much time that it feels obsessive or overwhelming, but not so little that you feel neglectful or out of touch. Second, you need to honor the natural rhythms and cycles. Your energy, your focus, your financial situation, it will all ebb and flow. Your practice needs to accommodate that. That's completely normal. Third, you need to experiment and fine-tune. Give yourself permission to shift the tools you use, the methods you try, over time as your needs and circumstances change. What works now might not work next year.
Right. And finally, crucially, welcome guidance. Don't beat yourself up for not knowing everything about finance. Nobody does. Ask for help when you need it from professionals, from trusted resources. And remember to engage with your finances in small, manageable chunks. Take plenty of breaks. This isn't about achieving perfection overnight. It's about making steady progress.
And one of the sources breaks down a really robust money practice into 3 powerful levels, which kind of build on each other. First, there's the physical level. This is basically the getting things done layer. It includes all those concrete actions. Checking your balances, diligently tracking your expenses, paying your bills on time, meeting with your financial support team, your accountant, your financial advisor, whoever that might be. Then there's the emotional psychological level. This dives deeper. It involves compassionate mindfulness towards your financial life. So this could mean doing regular body check-ins, just noticing any physical sensations or emotions that come up when you think about or deal with money. It means gently working through any resistance you might feel towards, say, budgeting or looking at your statements, maybe journaling about your feelings around money, or even considering financial therapy if there are deeper issues or patterns you want to address. And then there's the spiritual level. Now, this isn't necessarily religious, but it explores how money connects to your deepest personal values, your sense of purpose, your larger vision for your life. This includes things like actively cultivating trust in your ability to achieve your goals, deepening your experience of true prosperity, which is more than just money, and finding ways to express generosity that feel genuinely good and sustainable for you.
That's a really holistic way to look at it. So how might someone listening right now actually integrate these practices into their own life? What could a schedule look like?
Well, you could start small. Maybe set up a daily money practice. This could take just 5 or 10 minutes. It might be as simple as consciously pausing to ask for a receipt after a purchase, or quickly checking your main bank account balance online each morning, or just taking a mindful moment to acknowledge a spending decision you made. But most importantly, maybe end that mini session by congratulating yourself for any money work you did, no matter how small it feels. Consistency really is key here.
Okay, daily check-ins. Then what? Maybe something weekly. Then there's perhaps a weekly money practice. This might take a bit longer, maybe 20 to 30 minutes. You can think of this as your regular financial house cleaning. Set aside a specific time each week. This is where you could review your daily steps from the week. Get current with filing any paper receipts or organizing digital ones. Check all your key balances, bank accounts, credit cards, investments. Make any necessary deposits, pay any upcoming bills that need attention, and actively look for those money leaks. Old subscriptions you forgot about, recurring charges you don't need anymore.
Good. And then, maybe for a deeper dive, you could plan a monthly money practice. Perhaps set aside 45 minutes to an hour. It's advised to start by taking care of yourself first. Maybe clear some physical clutter from your workspace, grab a cup of tea, put on some calming music, get in a good headspace. Then reconcile your accounts. Make sure your records match the bank's. Review your monthly financial reports, like your budget variance or cash flow statement. Really look at your income and expense categories for the past month. Ask yourself, which of my deep values did I actually honor with my spending this month? Where did my money align with what's truly important to me? Celebrate your successes where you stayed on track, where you made progress, and gently, without judgment, inquire into any areas where you might want to make changes next month.
And finally, maybe once a year, a bigger picture review. Exactly. An annual review. This might take a bit longer, maybe 1.5 to 3 hours, so block out some dedicated time. This is meant to be a gentle, compassionate review of your entire financial year. No beating yourself up aloud. Connect with where you are in your current life phase. Reflect on what's most important to you right now and where you feel you're headed in the next year or so. Take stock of the past year, what financial strategies worked well, what didn't, what did you learn, and based on that, set clear, positive intentions for the next 12 months. Wow. We've really gone on quite a journey today, haven't we? Unpacking the incredibly complex psychology that underpins pretty much all of our financial decisions. It's become abundantly clear, I think, that money isn't just about cold, hard logic and numbers on a page. It's deeply, deeply intertwined with our emotions, our past experiences, our family history, and even those powerful, often completely hidden, unconscious beliefs or scripts.
Absolutely. And understanding these behavioral biases, these money scripts,
Yeah.
it really isn't about blaming ourselves for past mistakes or choices we regret. Not at all. It's about empowering ourselves, giving us the knowledge and awareness to make more rational, more informed, and ultimately healthier financial choices as we move forward. It really challenges us, I think, to think deeply about our own personal agency, our ability to choose in a world that's just full of these subtle psychological traps and influences.
So what does this all mean for you listening? Well, hopefully you now have a deeper understanding of some of these invisible forces at play in your own financial life, and crucially, some practical strategies and frameworks to help you navigate them more effectively. It really boils down to building self-awareness, embracing personal accountability gently, and consistently practicing those mindful money habits we talked about.
hmm And remember, even the smallest, most intentional steps, whether it's setting up that automatic saving transfer, making an extra debt payment, or just pausing before an impulse purchase, those small steps can lead to truly significant and cumulative improvements in not just your financial situation, but your overall sense of well-being and control.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you to maybe mull over after this deep dive. What one small intentional money habit can you commit to starting today? Something concrete, maybe from that daily, weekly, monthly practice list. Something that you feel could really reverberate positively through your financial future. And perhaps just as importantly, what unconscious money script, what hidden belief might actually be holding you back right now for making that very change? Just think about it. Let that curiosity, that self-reflection guide your next step.